One of the main goals of this channel here is to shed some light on the extreme complexity of the fall of the Roman Empire and to debunk some common misconceptions associated with it. And the common misconception that I often hear or read is that Rome had ceased to be the capital of the Western Roman Empire and that first Mediolanum and later Ravenna would become the capitals of the Western Roman Empire starting from the late 3rd century onwards. I am going to argue in this video that this is not entirely true, and we shall see that in fact, especially in the last decade of the Western Empire, Rome would once again be not only the symbolic capital, but also the real imperial seat of the Western Roman emperors once again. As so often, our story starts with the crisis of the 3rd century. This crisis, in which the empire almost fell, saw the incursions of barbarian invaders, massive civil wars, and huge economic problems. In the Balkans and northern Italy, Germanic tribes had managed to sack and destroy many cities. They were stopped through the valiant efforts of emperors such as Gallienus, Claudius Gothicus, and Aurelian. But for the first time in 650 years, the city of Rome itself had felt real danger. To this end, Aurelian had imposing walls built around the city, still bearing his name, and still standing in many parts to this day. But the barbarian incursions made it necessary to reside closer to the frontier. And so Maximian, one of the senior emperors of the Tetrarchy, made Mediolanum his imperial seat in 286 AD. This city would now become the standard seat of the Western Roman emperors. It must be noted though that the Emperor Maxentius was an exception, as he chose to reside in Rome from 306 until his death in 312 AD. He would build the last impressive buildings in this city, as we have discussed in this video here. Honorius then moved the imperial seat to Ravenna in 402 AD, a city that was strategically excellently situated. Surrounded by marshes to the west and sea to the east, the city was extremely difficult, if not impossible, to be captured in direct assault. Thus, we can now often read or hear that from that time onwards, Ravenna would be the capital of the Western Roman Empire. But here it must be noted that a distinction should be made between imperial seat and capital, as they are not necessarily one and the same thing. It is true that the imperial court and the imperial mint would have its seat where the emperor chose to reside. Therefore, first Mediolanum and then Ravenna would see a growing importance. However, Rome always remained the symbolic capital of the Western Roman Empire, as impressively demonstrated by the reactions to the sack of 410 AD. Had Rome, as is often being said, been degraded to an unimportant backwater city by 410, the reactions certainly would not have been as strong as they had been. Jerome wrote, for example, in letter 127, dated from 2 years after the sack of 410, "My voice sticks in my throat, and as I dictate, sobs choke my utterance. The city that captured the whole world is captured." Augustine of Hippo expressed a similar reaction, which made him write his book, The City of God. The event also led to pagans blaming Christians for the disaster, and even to quite a few Christians reverting back to paganism, which was promptly counteracted by imperial laws forbidding such conversions by threat of severe punishments. Had Rome not been an important city, and in the minds of people in 410 not the symbolic capital of the entire empire, nay, of the entire world, we quite likely would not have had such strong reactions. We should also not forget that in 410 AD, Rome was still by far the largest city in the entire Roman Empire, still larger than Constantinople. By that time, according to modern estimates, Rome must still have had 800,000 inhabitants, and even by 450 AD still measured probably around 500,000 people. Constantinople, on the other hand, is estimated to never have had more than 500,000 inhabitants, even during its peak. We shall compare Rome and Constantinople in great detail in a future video. Only by the later 5th century did the population of Rome start to decline more severely, after the sacks of 455 and 472. And even then was Rome still the largest city of the Western Empire, both by number of inhabitants and by urban area. In 410, Rome was undisputedly the largest city of the empire, including Constantinople, and by far the largest in the Western Empire, far larger than Mediolanum or Ravenna, that must have measured, even during their peaks, only a modest 100,000 inhabitants. And please like this video and subscribe, and also turn on the bell so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And if you want to suggest video topics of your own, participate in polls, chat with other enthusiasts of the Roman Empire, or participate in exclusive live streams with me or our team, you can gain these perks by supporting our work on Patreon or via becoming a YouTube member. Thanks to your support, we will be able to explore many different topics of the late Roman Empire and make many videos for years to come. Gratias agut tibi, amici. Now, it could be argued that even though Rome never ceased to be the symbolic capital of the empire and was still the largest city in 410, that during the last decades of the empire it would surely fall into complete obscurity, as is quite often wrongly propagated on YouTube or even in quite a few historical books. But the Emperor Valentinian III, to our surprise, was actually quite fond of Rome. More and more often would he visit Rome, venturing away from Ravenna, visiting the old capital. He must have been quite impressed by the city, as not only did he choose to reside more and more frequently in the old palace of the Caesars from 440 AD onwards, but what is quite often neglected is the fact that he had the imperial seat, together with his entire family, moved back to Rome in 450 AD. This emperor, even though generally a weak and incapable emperor, who made the terrible mistake of killing his able Magister Militum Aetius, started a trend that would see Rome be not only the symbolic capital of the Western Roman Empire, but indeed once again the true capital. Because not only had Valentinian III brought his entire imperial family to Rome, but also the imperial mint. Coins would once again be minted in the old capital. Valentinian III was killed by supporters of Aetius in 455 while riding his horse on the Campus Martius in Rome. The emperors following him continued the trend he started. The usurper Petronius Maximus resided in Rome, at least until the Vandals came, when he tried to flee the city but was spotted by the people of Rome and killed by them. After the Vandal sack of 455, the Emperor Avitus would also mostly reside in Rome. Majorian would choose to reside in Ravenna, quite likely because being further north would prove more efficient for his reconquest efforts. Ricimer's puppet emperor Libius Severus would also reside in Ravenna, but then Anthemius would fully reside in Rome again from 467 to 472. He would take up residence in the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill like the old emperors. We talked about the end of this last great Western Roman emperor and how he was killed by Ricimer's barbarians in this video here. Anthemius' successor Olybrius would also reside in Rome during his short 7-month reign. His successor would be Glucerius, and he would again choose to reside in northern Italy, quite likely in Ravenna, as indicated by the minting of coins during his reign that were issued only from Ravenna and Mediolanum. The last rightful Roman emperor would then be Julius Nepos, who was sent by the Eastern Roman Emperor Leo. He was proclaimed Western Roman Emperor in Rome in 474 AD and not in Ravenna. It is possible that he resided in Rome, although this is not exactly known. However, the minting of coins, not only in Ravenna and Mediolanum as under Glucerius, but additionally also in Rome, suggests that the imperial minting facility in Rome had been restored under Julius Nepos, making it quite possible that he could have resided in the Eternal City. And then lastly, the usurper Orestes made his son Western Roman Emperor in 475. And he would reside for 1 year in Ravenna before being famously deposed by Odoacer. We can thus see that astoundingly often Rome would again be not only seat of the emperor from 450 AD onwards, but also seat of the imperial mint, strongly suggesting that Rome had in fact again been the true imperial capital more than half of the time from 450 AD until 476 AD. This is in stark contrast to the often presented theory that Rome had declined to utter insignificance after the Vandal sack of 455. In fact, quite the contrary can be observed, and many emperors would choose to make the old capital again seat of the empire, as in the old days. Of course, this had to do with the shrinking of the empire, and this shrinkage led to a growing importance of the Senate of Rome and the old aristocratic Roman families. Their power now grew as the empire shrank, and so residing in Rome made sense for the emperors, as they would need support from the Senate of Rome and the old aristocratic families for their policies. It might also be a reactionary move, hoping to restore the old glory of the Roman Empire by ruling again from Rome as in the times of Augustus, Trajan or Marcus Aurelius. The emperors saw their empire dwindle, and so some of them thought that maybe restoring the old ways would see the fortunes for the empire be reversed. But as we know, this did not happen. Even making Rome capital of the Western Roman Empire again was to no avail. Too far gone was the empire by 450 when Valentinian III returned to Rome and resided in the old palace on the Palatine Hill. And if you are interested in how Rome must have looked some decades after the fall, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you are more interested in when the fall of the Roman Empire started, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history and to all who are like me absolutely fascinated by the late Roman Empire. Gratias amici imperii Romani, and bene vale.